Now, in terms of implementation, what edge computing frameworks stand out for you, and like what would you say are the factors one should like consider when selecting an edge computing framework?
Wow, that's a good one. I don't know if there's any good standard edge frameworks. Everybody seems to be building their own thing. It's like you're in that early part of a new market where everyone's trying to win.
Yeah.
And so you have lots of different players and they're all building their own proprietary technology to do the same thing. And so that's a really good question because, you know, as you can imagine, one of the problems with edge computing that people don't think about is orchestration of edge nodes. Like for instance, if I'm just doing cloud IoT, it's it's a hub and spoke, one place for many devices, and so in some ways it makes it simpler. With edge, I might be deploying thousands of edge nodes to locations and doing different types of analytics or compute in all those locations, but I need to orchestrate them. And so maybe somewhere at a centralized location, and this gets to like what framework are you using? What is that I hate when people say what that single pane of glass where maybe it's in the cloud, but it's a central location where I can put in whatever analytics I want to do and I want to push it down to the edge device and then orchestrate, you know. And gosh, you can imagine with telecom, the idea of doing MEC inside of base stations and cell towers, pushing edge nodes out and new compute ideas to the local devices that may be talking to it. It gets super complicated really fast. If I think of different players who are doing edge compute that are trying to orchestrate it, early on you got Greengrass from AWS.
Yeah.
There's the Azure IoT Edge, when they're pushing stuff in containers. I worked with folks. Are you familiar with an IoT company called Locent?
Locent, yeah.
Yeah. They do a good job of orchestrating analytics and pushing down containers to edge nodes. There's certainly some open source edge. I don't know if you've been involved at that Edge X Foundry.
Come across it, yes, yeah.
Yeah. I've been involved with them for a long time. But of course, they started with the idea of just kind of this isolated edge node that was going to pull in data, do something, maybe go upstream to a cloud. It didn't necessarily have the idea of orchestrating it, though, a framework for orchestrating mini nodes. That may have changed by now. The Eclipse Foundation is doing some things there's a few projects in the Eclipse IoT where they're doing some edge things like that. But it's an interesting question. It's a much harder problem to solve. And so you definitely have to have a good framework. I think there's a company in Stockholm called Crosser that does some edge compute, and they have kind of like Locent, they have a nice visual tool to drag and drop, from a PLC using OPC UA to
kind of like
whatever.
Node-RED.
Yeah, it looks like Node-RED. Yeah, it's very much like Node-RED. Absolutely. But again, these are obviously individual companies who are doing things like that. But there's certainly some good ideas out there for sure.
Yeah. So in a way, we can say the common baseline here is container technology. That's something that is common throughout all these frameworks.
It seems that way, but there are some other companies that are doing something different, because I do spend a lot of time talking, just like you do.
Yeah.
There's another company that there's a company called swim.ai, and they have edge nodes. It's almost like they're sprinkling little agents across devices everywhere. They don't use containers. In fact, they don't follow a lot of the rules that we think of. And they have incredible advanced technology. When I think of edge analytics, I think they may all be like Java virtual machines, but they kind of act like, in programming, how you've heard of an actor framework is a different pattern for doing software development. It comes from that language, Erlang. Anyway, they've got technology where all these actors it's almost like threads in software, but they're even smaller. and each thread is carrying about one particular sensor or one machine on its own, and they distribute. It's really remarkable technology. I've seen them. They put the technology out there, maybe on Raspberry Pis even.
Yeah.
They don't program it. They don't tell it what to do, and they just start having the data come in to these edge devices, and these agents just observe the data over time, maybe for a day or two, and then they determine the shape of the data types, what they think. They create digital twins on the fly.
Yeah.
Then they create machine learning models on the fly at the edge, and they train them at the edge. And they don't use containers, and it's pretty crazy advanced technology. It's always interesting when you look around and see what people are doing.
Sounds very interesting.
You should check them out sometime. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll definitely check them out. Sounds very, very interesting.